In this video clip, I'll explain to you how to do the method addLeaves, which is in the assessment 7B. And this requires you to place 10 leaves randomly in the inner world. And the inner world includes the coordinate 1, 1 to 6, 6. Let's have a look at what it looks like. This is the world and this is the inner world. Inner world goes from 1, 1 to 6, 6. And that excludes any of these outer rows and columns. And how do we identify the outer rows and columns? Anything that goes from 0, 0 to 7, 7. Now that's all seems easy enough, but the problem is that when we call the getRandomNumber, it generates 0 to the number given, 1 less than the number given. But we don't want 0. And therefore, when the random number is generated, we will specify, we'll in fact keep asking for another random number if the generated number is 0. So we say, we don't want that, give me another number. We don't want that, please give me another number. And we can specify we want only up to 6. And that is easy to do because when we say getRandomNumber 7, that includes anything from 0 to 6. Okay, so now let's do the coding for that. First, this is the name of the method. We will always put the documentation first. What does this method do? addLeaves places leaves randomly in the inner world. Now we need two coordinates, x and y, and we will declare them as integers because they are whole numbers. And then we start our coding now. We need to, let's forget about the 10 leaves, we'll just solve the actually I might do the loop first because it asks you to do 10 leaves. We'll have a loop that goes from 1 to 10. Okay, when we know exactly how many times to do something, we are best to use a for loop. So we can declare I within the loop itself, and then we want it to go up to 10 times, which is, if you're going from 0, it should go up to only 9. That's why I have less than 9 here. But if this is confusing to you, you can use 1 to 10. If you like to actually see that, it's going to end at 10. Okay, and then after each iteration, increase I by 1. And then, now that's what we want repeated. At the end of that, I will put end of for loop. Because you see curly brackets everywhere, I would like to put these to indicate what is that curly bracket for. Maybe here, it's the end of addLeaves. Right? And now this is something that we are required to do because we need 10 leaves. But now inside that loop, what do we really need to do? First, we need to get an x coordinate, but that has to be within a loop because what if we don't like what they give? Because they might generate 0. So no, we don't want that. So we will have a do while loop that goes for, do we know how many times? No, we don't know because we don't know how many times it's going to go for because, sorry, my phone is ringing in the background. We don't know how many times it's going to go for because we don't know when we will get the 0. We might get 0 in the first time, or we might get 0 in the 10th time. You know, we can try 0 10 times. Each time it's generated 0. So we don't know. It might go for 10 times the loop. So we have to say, as long as the x that they are generating is equal to 0, right? We need to keep going inside the loop and asking for more. Really, that's what we need to do. And I will put the curly brackets here, even though you don't really need it, but because you're learning the loops, to see that this is the start of the do and this is the end of the loop. And everything inside here needs to be repeated. We need to get an x coordinate, and it should be a GreenFoot class, and the method name is getRandomNumber, and it must be less than 7, not including 7. And here it is. That's just to get a random number for x coordinate. Now we want to get a random number for y coordinate. We want to do the same thing for the y coordinate. We just have to change this. Tell me now, when we go inside this loop and do it over and over again, as long as it's a 0, we keep asking for more. And when we come out, we are guaranteed that we have an x that is not 0. When we come out of this loop, we are guaranteed that we have a y that is not 0. Now, once we come out, now we got x and y that is not 0, we can now place them in the world, inner world. So we go add object, new leaf, place them in the x coordinate and y coordinate. This is the coordinates, right? And now if you have a look, these things within the for loop are repeated. There's 2 loops inside this for loop. Keep getting an x, keep getting a y, and once you get x and y that is not 0, place them on the world. And then go and do it for the second time. Second leaf. And then when you finish, go and get the third leaf. Up to 10 times. Here I will take a moment to explain the for loop. For loop, unlike other loops, you can actually initialize the I variable at the start of the loop and initialize it. And then it checks this condition. Is this condition true? If this condition is true, then it can get inside the loop. And it will do everything that is inside the loop. And at the end of the last statement, it will carry out this step, I++. So it will increment I by 1. And it will go back up to check, is this condition true still? It is. Go back in and do it again. And at the end of it, increment I by 1 and go over again and check. And so on. So this goes to 10 through 10 times. I think the only tricky thing that people find hard here is the starting value and the ending value. Remember, if you start it at 1, it will be less than or equal to the number of times that you want to do the loop. But if you start it at 0, it will be less than the number of times you want to carry the loop, not equal to. Because you're counting from 0 to 9. 0 to 9 is 10 times, and 1 to 10 is 10 times. Okay. Now let's compile this, and also notice my commenting, end of for loop and end of addLeaves. It is nice to comment these curly brackets as well, in case you have all these lots of curly brackets and you don't know where each one belongs to. And notice my indenting as well. It is very important to indent correctly. Now let's compile. Oh, there is a syntax error. Okay, this one is missing that's the end of addLeaves, and we need end of the class. End of Wombat World. Okay. Now let's run it. Here is the 10 leaves randomly placed within. Now sometimes you might wonder, oh, hey, it doesn't add up to 10. Not always will it add up to 10, because the randomly generated number might place the leaves on the same location, and we cannot see a leaf that is on top of another. It's perfectly placed. We cannot see that it's few leaves. So that's why, in case you're wondering why isn't that working, it's because some leaves are on top of each other. So now when you compile each time or reset each time, you will notice that the leaves are in different locations, but they're all still in the inner world. So the program is working. Okay,